Hello, my name is Cyril Sadowski and I am a developer on Advanced Coding Assistant application. Today I would like to talk to you about the so-called Agentic RAG or the Agentic Retrieval Augmented Generation that we are using in Advanced Coding Assistant. It sounds pretty fancy and honestly it is pretty fancy and it is doing a lot of heavy lifting behind the scenes in the application. But of course, we as developers should be able to understand what is actually happening and how the application is working. So the application itself, the Advanced Coding Assistant, has access to several tools. So this is the repository of Advanced Coding Assistant. And you can find the tools that this AI, the generative AI, has access to in a class called graph retrieval. And if I scroll up, you can see here in the commentary, the graph retrieval class is responsible for retrieving data from a Neo4j graph database related to a code base. And now if I scroll down, we can see this tool annotation. This tool annotation basically means that the AI can use this tool to retrieve data from a Neo4j database, and this particular tool is used for retrieving all relative paths for a file. And we will see how this works in a second. So we see that we have several tools available, or the AI has several tools available to it. And you can see that, for example, on line 167, there is a log statement. And the log is just outputting using tool find AST node by type and base name. So now, if I go to the application, to Advanced Coding Assistant, I already uploaded a repository into the application, into the database, and I will leave a link in the description to a YouTube video which actually describes how to upload a repository to Advanced Coding Assistant. So the repository has been already uploaded, and now I can ask a question. So let's start with this question. Can you give me an overview of the most important classes in this repository, at least from your point of view, classes which seem the most important? Okay, so let's send a request and wait for the reply. And this is the response that we received. Here are some of the most important classes found in the repository based on the available data. So the classes chatbot, code migration application, knowledge graph builder, embedding search service, etc. So as you can see, I uploaded the code of the code Advanced Assistant itself. So it's kind of doing a meta-analysis of itself, if we can say that. So it then just summarizes these classes are integral to the architecture and functionality of the repository, etc. But what actually happened behind the scenes? So now if I switch to my IDE and have a look at the logs, you can see that there is a lot of data and quite a lot of communication actually happening between the application and the generative AI itself. So using, for example, these logs, this log info, I can search through the logs and try to search for this term using tool. So if I go here and try to search for using tool, we can see that we were able to find one entry in the logs. However, I don't have the limit for the log generation setup for huge amounts of characters. So therefore my log gets truncated. So I don't even see what everything was actually returned by the artificial intelligence and what which tools were used. So to debug what is happening behind the scenes and how the application, how the chatbot is quote-unquote thinking, we can use the Neo4j database. So now if I switch to the database, this is the database on port 7474, and if we want to log in, the username is, the default username is neo4j and password is neo4j.password. And you can, by the way, find it in the applications.properties file. And now I can click on this icon on the database itself, and what I can select is this message node. And we can see that we do have several message nodes here. So let me try to find the correct one. So if I click here, you can see that I've chosen the first message, which is in a list or in ordered list. So this is the first message that gets transmitted to the generative AI, to your model, which you have connected to Advanced Coding Assistant. And as you can see, the text says, you are an assistant for finding the right context to a user query from codebase and answers the question. The codebase is pre-processed and stored as a graph in a Neo4j graph database, etc. And now, just for fun of it, I can just copy this text, go back to the codebase, and have a full text search, or do a full text search for this string, and you can see that this string actually exists in the general agent interface. This is the system message that always gets transferred as a first message to the generative AI. So now we can continue to traverse through the list of messages. So the second one, as you can see here, is my question. Can you give me an overview of the most important classes in this repository? And this is the question that I sent to Advanced Coding Assistant. And now comes the interesting part. So you can see that the next message is actually a call to a particular tool that the AI wants to use. So what I can do is I can just copy this part. This is the tool name. Go back to the code base, and in the graph retrieval class, I can search for it using a text search, and you can see that this is the tool that the AI requested to use. And what is the purpose of this tool? This is the first tool function you should use to gauge and get general understanding which files the repository contains. Search the repository codebase project for all files. Will return files and their relative paths. So the AI decided, based on my question, based on this question, can you give me an overview of the most important classes in this repository, that it needs to use this tool, find all files relative paths. And how do I know that? Well, because it's clearly stated in the database, in the message node. And this is a message node from the conversation that we are having here with the artificial intelligence, but it is hidden. This is not displayed. So you can see that we got a response from the tool itself. So what the tool has done, it went to the database and it retrieved all relative paths of the files that are in this repository. Now let's see the other message node in the list. So for example, it the AI requested to use a tool which is called Find AST Node by Type and Base Name. And it used these parameters, chatbot OpenAI code migration and node type class declaration. So now if I switch back to the IDE and the graph retrieval class, I can actually search for that tool. Find all, and what does this tool do? It finds all AST nodes with a certain type under a file node by base name. And what are the results? Well, the results are here. This is the results from the previous call, from the tool call. And what we can do is we can just copy these tool execution result, and I will use something simple like a notepad. And I can just copy paste the results here just to have a better idea of what the response was. So now I can scroll through and search through the actual result, and you can see that all of this text was returned from the database, from the local Neo4j database based on the AI's request. And you can see we do truncate the responses when they are too long, and this property you can actually find in the application.properties file. And that particular property is this ACA tool result max tokens, and now it's set to 80,000. So this is the maximum amount of tokens that we will return from a tool usage request by the AI. Okay, so the AI decided based on the message nodes list, or all the message nodes in this particular conversation. The AI also decided to use find AST node by type and base name, and this is the actual result. So the last node in this list of nodes is the actual response from the AI based on all of the previous information that were returned from the database using tools. And these tools, remember, were used based on AI's request. So you can see that this is the response that we got. Here are some of the most important classes found in the repository, and when I click back, you can see here are some of the most important classes found in the repository. So to summarize, I've explained how you can debug or actually see behind the scenes what the artificial intelligence is doing. And we are using something which is called Agentic RAG, or Agentic Retrieval Augmented Generation, which means that the AI has actually the possibility to choose the tools for retrieving data from the Neo4j graph database. Thank you for watching this video and have a nice day.